today and to share this webinar with so many of you. We had a flood of registrations, and some people might still join us, but thank you for being here and making the time. As per the invitation, I'm Marina Pretorius. I've been an organizational psychologist for just the amount of years where if you say it, it will risk you giving your age away. But it's also that age where you can very confidently say, I've been around the block in the world of work.
Marina, I thought it's only 26 years.
Roundabout there. So I've been around the block in this world of work where we always have this wonderful opportunity to work as work psychologists and make an impact and a difference in a space where so many people spend so much of their time and seek livelihood and purpose. I've worked in corporates, I've consulted to corporates as part of a large consulting firm, and for the past 5 years, I've worked as an independent consultant in collaboration with a number of associates. But my journey with Neurozone actually started in 2018 when I was facilitating a long-term team development journey with a large project team in the construction industry. Now, I knew the benefits and the limitations of the psychometrics that we all use. And I was looking for something to augment that because this was a group of people who were not at all into the soft stuff. And somehow the realness of our brain as an organ that needs nurturance and that helps or hinder us to do what we need to do felt a little bit more tangible to the leadership of that team. And we included it as a crucial tool eventually to build resilience in what was a very high pressured environment. So over the past 2 years, I've worked with Neurozone in the development and facilitation of their product training in collaboration with JVR, whilst also supporting them with the clients that uses the products in their individual team and organizational development initiatives. And I'm very excited to share one of those stories with you. However, we have very limited time and a huge amount of information. So if it's your first time to be introduced to Neurozone, warm welcome. But you are really only going to see the tip of the iceberg. I've opted to give a really high-level introduction into Neurozone and our Neurozone assessment to spend a little bit more time on the case study itself, but then also to end off with a number of resources that you can access that will tell you more and take you deeper into what it's all about. Of course, you are welcome to ask questions in the chat. Carina De Bruin is my producer, and she will make me aware of the questions, and we can answer them as we go along. But we'll also give an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Okay, so where did it all start? Neurozone was started as a company, I think around 2010 by Dr. Etienne van der Walt, who was at that time a practicing neurologist. His story, if you've heard it, is one where he saw more and more patients coming into his practice with symptoms that resembled neurological disorders. But when they did the brain scans, they couldn't find anything wrong. And the more he delved into it, the more he realized that that these symptoms was actually as a result of what we know now to be severe cases of burnout. Now, Etienne himself is a holistic and a systemic thinker, and he started venturing beyond the traditional medical approaches to help his patients. And he started this journey of developing what we now call today the Neurozone Code for High Performance Resilience. Now, there are some key concepts to understand the Neurozone system and to understand where we come from and how we look at the human condition. So Neurozone looks at the human condition and behavior through a neuropsycho-immunological lens. Now, this means in plain words that we view people and teams and organizations as integrated living systems. Living systems being open, self-organizing systems that have the special characteristics of life, and they interact with their environment. And they are orchestrated by our nervous system. From this perspective, the human condition is one where we continuously move up and down an axis, or where we are continuously faced with opportunities and challenges. And that asks of our whole system to respond in order to stay alive, survive, and thrive. And if I say our whole system, I mean our physiology, our psychology, and everything that makes us human. So whether we know it or not, we are constantly faced with these challenges of life, but also the opportunities of life. And the best place from a neuropsychoimmunological perspective to face these opportunities and threats is one that Etienne coined as the baseline relaxed physiological state. Now, that is a biological state of silent alertness, where we are at our cognitive, emotional, and physical best. I'd love to explain that to you more in detail. There's a video on it, which you will find in our resources. But the baseline relaxed physiological state is that state where our body and our mind is at rest, not asleep, but it is ready to take on the next challenge. So in this process of facing opportunities and challenges, our system moves up and down this axis of, it's an imaginary axis, where high performance and thriving is at the end, the high end, where we aspire to be. And it goes down to what is ultimately brain-body implosion or death. Our movement along this axis is mainly driven by the way our living system can summon the right amount of energy to allocate to the task at hand. Because all tasks, whether they are enjoyable or whether they are stressful, causes stress or asks for energy and a stress response which release the cortisol and adrenaline to do what we need to do. Good stress is obviously when our nervous system can produce the right amount of energy at the right time to overcome the challenges or seize the opportunity, and then return to the baseline relaxed physiological state. So it is real health and optimization. This is when we can go back to that state where our immunity system then works optimally. We can replenish our food. We have a good digestive system. Number of characteristics of that baseline relaxed physiological state. But the main point is that we have the capacity to come back to that state. However, and I think many of you will resonate with this, is that we find ourselves today, especially in situations and environments that constantly triggers our nervous system to respond to challenges and opportunities because they become bigger and more. But it does not allow us always to return back to the baseline relaxed physiological state. And in that way, we develop what is called chronic stress. And that chronic stress, as many of you probably know, leads to physical dysfunction, brain-body implosion, and ultimately death. We know that we live in a pandemic of chronic diseases, lifestyle diseases, which is often brought on by high levels of stress, and that is preventable. So the question that Etienne set out to answer was, what do we need to do to have brain-body optimization? And then the ability to constantly navigate back to this baseline relaxed physiological state. so that we can optimize our potential for staying out of chronic stress and more optimally pursue our goals of high performance and thriving as individuals, but also as teams or families, and then also in our larger systems that we work with, like the organizations that we are part of. Now, the answer came over many years, but in the form of the Neurozone Code for High Performance Resilience, and a measurement to assess this, as well as then provide practically science-based recommendations for what we need to do. Now, I'm sure that you've all had the experience of how your social media starts to be infused first and then flooded later on by topics that you were just once curious about. And you will most likely see more wellness advice coming your way just for registering for this webinar. But that stream of advice comes from sources with various motivations behind them and various levels of credibility. So this is what the Neurozone research team faced when they started the journey. These neurobehaviors, as we call them, were sifted out through rigorous literature review and scientific backing among the myriad of health and wellness and personal mastery information and advice that we find out there. The current list is a collection of 59 behaviors, which we describe as behaviors, emotional states, and cognitive states that positively and meaningfully cultivates resilience. Now, a little bit more about that later. The list is, of course, not exhaustive, but it was reviewed and included because of its strength of its relationship to building resilience. It's constantly under review because science is constantly developing and giving us more information of what to take in. But it has remained stable for quite a long time. These 59 behaviors were structured into 5 domains, as you can see there on the picture. And it combined behaviors that had similar but distinctive different impacts on cultivating resilience. The framework that was created is really and truly a holistic combination of behaviors and emotional and cognitive states that came out top through the studies that Neurozone do for optimizing brain-body systems. But that was not all that emerged from the research. In the first version of the Neurozone assessment, the research team theoretically proposed that practicing these behaviors would improve individual outcomes such as resilience, self-leadership, learning capacity, and innovation capacity. But the research and the refinement around the model continued, and resilience emerged as having the best statistical relationship with these behaviors. And so the team set out to refine their definition and measurement of resilience. Okay. So resilience, I think, is a very well-known concept to many of you. It is comes from the paradigm in the world of positive psychology, and it is rightly referred to as our ability to bounce back. If one, however, looks at resilience through a neuropsychoimmunological lens, we see that resilience is actually a systemic capacity of many living systems, of which the human beings are, of course, us, and we experience it every day. So at Neurozone, we define resilience a little bit different. It is innate, meaning born into, wired into, part of your being, psycho-immunological capacity, build up of all those different components within us to overcome challenges, withstand breakdown, and very important, to learn and grow from doing so. Because from the neuroscience perspective, we know that our brain has the capacity for neuroplasticity, and every experience changes us. Every experience changes our brain. So The research team set out to develop a valid and a reliable assessment of resilience as a psychological construct and published the result of this study and the properties of the instrument in the International Journal of Testing in 2022. Marina will post a copy of this document, which you can then read through. And it's really worth reading to understand how resilience was conceptualized. There were three main contributors: positive affect, stress mastery, and early life stability, which came out as in the factor analysis. And the instrument had quite a few contributions that it made to the field of measuring resilience. It's a 28-item questionnaire, and as mentioned, it was published internationally. The instrument measures psychological resilience as a construct. What it also did that some of the other instruments did not do was to introduce cutoff scores for the different bands that the scores could fall in. And that contributed in helping to understand what the score mean and what type of intervention should be considered when wanting to support someone to improve their resilience. Now, in the validation process, the team also tested validation through inverse correlations with assessments of PTSD, of stress, insomnia, and anxiety. So we know that those are all conditions of mental well-being or mental unwell-being, if you then want to say it like that. And therefore, the scores could be interpreted by also saying, giving you an indication of the person's well-being. The scores also were have shown, or the results shown, that there was a meaningful and direct relationship with certain performance outcomes. In this first group of people, it was academic performance and turnover intention, as well as some brain body optimization aspects that was assessed. Okay, so let's conclude this intro by putting it all together. I've already...
Marina?
Yes, Karina.
Sorry for interrupting you. Isabella was asking whether these 5 behaviors are in any way linked to or aligned with or reflective of the so-called big 5 personality traits.
No, not at all. Not at all. So this is now where I had to resist the, the temptation to add in the 59 neuro behaviors and the framework into this presentation. The neuro behaviors are not psychological behaviors at all. They are, and let's go back and I can quickly, or let me explain it in the next slide then to you. Putting it all together, we have already alluded to this concept of the axis and moving between burnout and death, and the role of the baseline relaxed physiological state. Now, the Neurozone Personal Assessment assesses 59 behaviors divided into 5 domains, and those behaviors relates to, and the names of the domains gives it away. One is rhythms, so it is all about our sleep habits, our mindfulness habits, nutrition, exercise. It's what we know to be the typical health and well-being behaviors. It also refers to the connectors, and those are our behaviors that we call our interpersonal adhesives. It's granular measurements of our levels of belonging, of trust, of identity, of purpose, not just individually, but also in our teams and in our organizations. And it also gives an indication of how you experience things like empathy in your current environment. So connectors are all behaviors around these. How do we connect to people? Because we are social beings. We have the energy domain, which is the behaviors that relates to how our brain consciously and subconsciously, mostly subconsciously, allocates energy to different tasks. And what are those behaviors that act as blockers to the energy, and as enablers, and that optimize the use of our energy, while we adhere to, or while we try and tackle the tasks ahead of us. The fourth domain, or a fourth domain, is one of transformers, which is all about mindset, the filters that we have in our brain that shapes how we look at the world. And what are those behaviors that help shapes, but also can help shift our mindsets, to be more open for more options and more solution thinking. And then there's the domain of innovators, which is one that looks at how do we solve problems? How do we actually use the prefrontal cortex to look at problems and to solve them? What are the techniques that we use and can use to optimize that? So you can hear that these behaviors are by no means psychological, but they cover a large domain of what we as psychologists know to be important for the development of people and teams and organizations. It takes into account, if I can say, the emotional and emotional intelligence capacity, the relationships between people, but it also takes you back to the very practical task of what you're actually supposed to do, and that is solve problems and be innovative in how you solve the problem. So that's the neuro behaviors. Resilience, on the other hand, is then the psychological construct. And what we then found in the research, is that the Neurozone Personal Assessment, and to come back to the code itself, provides then a personalized and a unique code for the individual. It takes that 59 behaviors, it looks at your resilience score, it takes the 59 behaviors and how you scored on that, and how you indicated your habits and your practices around it. And based on its statistical relationship to resilience, it orders these 59 behaviors for you in the top 6. That if you focus on them and to develop them, they have the biggest potential to optimize and improve your resilience that you that we know and call the bedrock of well-being. Because if we have resilience as human beings, we have this capacity to withstand breakdown, face adversities, and optimize our ability to learn and to grow from that. Okay, let me pause here. Are there other questions around Neurozone and the instrument itself? Like I said, it's a very quick intro. Yes, Henry. Gerard, sorry, Gerard.
Marina, I don't see any questions in the chat.
I see people raising their hands. Colleen? Are you allowed to talk? Okay. Colleen,
Marina. Oh,
yes.
there's Colleen. Sorry.
Hi, Marina. Thank you so much. This is so informative. I just have a question on a case that you might be able to share that scales across a large organizational division. So let's say you want to roll this out to 2,000 people. How would that work?
That's exactly what our case study is about. So hold on to that question.
Thank you.
We'll get there just now. Okay, other questions quickly. Sorry, we figured out now how to how to allow people to talk. Okay, let me go on. So we have an exclusive invitation for everyone that is joining us practically today in this webinar. We would like to invite you to complete the full Neurozone Personal Assessment, and to obtain your own Neurozone code for high performance resilience. This is only extended to the people who are actually attending today. And we will have, by the end of the webinar, we will have the list of attendees. Our colleagues at JVR will then send you a unique invitation list or invitation link tomorrow morning early. And you have till close of business or 5 o'clock on Monday to complete the assessment and get your report. The report will be emailed to you in PDF format. But look out and keep an eye open for the email tomorrow morning if you are here by the end of the session. And yeah, feel welcome to take the Neurozone Personal Assessment and get your own personal code here at the beginning of the year. Okay, so let's move on to the case study and what I want to share with you in terms of a practical application. Now, I chose a large-scale intervention to share with you because many of you may work in those types of environments. And we were actually looking, our case study starts with a client who was a division of a large financial institution in South Africa. They were undergoing restructuring, but the restructuring was actually one of the last steps in what was a 2-year turnaround strategy. What was very striking from this specific client context was that the management team were actively involved in designing their own new organizational structure, which their leader told me was very difficult, very growth-provoking for each one of them, because they, in fact, had to create a profitable business from their knowledge of the environment, which could cost them their job or the jobs of the people they've been working with for a very long time. So he was very aware that it was not just the task of reorganizing and restructuring, but also an emotional involvement in this process that was creating a lot of stress in the system. At the same time, they couldn't communicate all of the details with staff yet, because as many of you might know, uncertainty is not good. So they decided to not share the details about the restructuring with people. But people were sensing that they were working very hard, that they had to meet very high targets. And the need of resilience just increased. Now, the HR team of this division engaged in a similar journey the year before. And they strongly advised the leadership to use the Neurozone approach. Now, it was 113 employees that was divided into 8 teams. And the communication and invitation to the employees was very clear to them. This is an extract from the emails that were sent out. And you can see there that the tone and the focus is very much one where people were asked to take up an individual opportunity. It was specifically intended to be an individually focused intervention and not a team intervention, given that the teams could and would change after the restructuring. We did, however, plan for it also for team engagements to be part, because that's part of the learning process and the reinforcement process. Now, what was really a privilege was that the project was really strongly supported by the top leader. He was highly motivated due to a personal health challenge. He had a heart attack a few years ago, which made him change his lifestyle. And when he, understood the information around how health and resilience came together as a psychological construct to combat stress and burnout, he totally bought in and also motivated the rest of his leadership team to take part. So and later on I'll mention it again, the role of personal experiences in this journey towards high performance and well-being. Now, just as a quick overview, how we structured this project, we tried to keep it very simple to accommodate the limited time and the resources that the team had. It was planned for a 6 weeks intervention that would kick off with an orientation session to the Neurozone assessment and the app and the whole process. We would then do group debriefing, so check in with each group and after they've done the assessment and give a group feedback on what the assessment results are like, how they could interpret it, and ask for some feedback on their experience of it. We then engaged in leadership coaching sessions, so where we saw the 8 leaders of the 8 teams individually, and that was to guide them in more detail into their own results and to give them guidance on how they could integrate this in their working environments and also with their teams. And then we would end off with a second group coaching session where we would ask people their experience of it, their examples of how they've implemented it, and what it meant to them. Another big positive of the project was that we had very strong HR support. The OD team and the HR team was very much aligned, and we had regular contact and check-ins to align it also to what they were busy with. How it played out, however, was that the 6 weeks turned into 6 months. So that was the first big change that we had in the project. And looking back, I'm not sure whether it was a pro or a con. It resulted from our stance to not put pressure on people to participate because it's voluntary, but also the biggest delay was the availability of leadership teams to engage in their individual coaching sessions and then to be able to set up the second group coaching sessions. However, the kickoff that we had was attended by more than 90% of the 113 people, which we could see, in the attendance registers. And yeah, people really showed up and they really wanted to participate. Now, these are just 2 graphs to try and summarize all the information. In the first 2 months of the project, there was an 83% take-up in the assessment. So 94 out of the 113 employees completed the assessment within the first 2 months. That was great, and it resembled, the kickoff meeting participation. However, it then flattened out. And as you can see here in November, when we eventually had the second coaching session, it improved again. Yes, Karina.
Marina, Isabella is asking whether there's a specific reason why the coaching session was mainly with the leadership team during months 3, 4, and 5, and why not have team coaching sessions where the leaders were present too?
So the leaders were present in all the group coaching sessions. The first group coaching session was to debrief them, and they were part. So the rationale for structuring the project in this way was, like I said, we tried to keep it very simple and very short and very focused. 6 weeks, you do your assessment, you get feedback as a group, what it means, what you need to do. They were all subscribed to the Neurozone app, which is a self-guiding tool that after you've done the assessment tells you what are the activities that you can do. It gives you exposure to all the learning materials. You can change it. It's a very interactive app that you can use. And we obviously gave the client a lot of options, and they opted for this one. So leadership were part of these group coaching sessions, but I had many reschedulings of meetings. Now, the rationale for, we wanted to have the leadership coaching first before we did the second group coaching session, so that the leader could be better equipped and more informed and more, almost want to say, in touch and in tune with what the results mean, so that they could help facilitate the conversation with the employees. And that pushed out the second group coaching session to a few months later, literally. Okay. So what else does the results shows us? Yes, is there another hand question?
I don't see any. Let me just go to the top. I don't see any.
So what was encouraging to see, and you can see it from this graph, is that we took the first 94 responses of the people who completed the assessment in June and July, and could see that the average score, the average resilience, was one of 68. Now, in the bands, this is seen as a moderate to high moderate score. And it was very encouraging to see that the majority of people actually fell into this moderate to high levels of resilience. However, there were also people that was very low in resilience, and the need for well-being support was really evident in that. The coaching session, like I mentioned, happened in November, and then we saw a more uptake. And for the second rounders, the yellow people, or the yellow graph, there was a slight increase of their resilience index from 61 to 65. So the people who redid it had a lower average, but they actually re-engaged, and it moved up to 65. So, and that stayed also the same for two people who did it actually the third time. Now, maybe I should just mention here that if you have a subscription to the Neurozone app, you can actually complete the assessment as many times as you like. And we encouraged people in the beginning of the project to actually do the assessment every month to see how their resilience differs and changes, because resilience is not a static trait. It is a dynamic state because of our influence and being influenced by the external environment and our internal environments. But like we see, the engagement dwindled down and then took up when there was again personal engagement. Now, in the second group coaching sessions was very well attended, and we will talk about that just now. But the leadership coaching sessions, 7 out of the 8 delegates attended these sessions. One was for personal reasons that just we could not fit that in. And like I said, that caused the biggest impact on the project moving out. In the individual leadership coaching sessions was immensely insightful. And the most striking was to see how vastly different spaces people were coming from. These 7 people were in complete different places when it came to their own health and well-being and resilience. They all completed the assessment, but some did not even look at the assessment yet. They didn't see it in their email. It was just nowhere on their radar, 1 or 2 of them. Up to some other people that was actually already practicing so many of the behaviors, mostly in the rhythms area, because that's well known to be health and well-being related. And then everything in between. Someone who just read it, who didn't go into the app, who didn't know how to use the app, but also that started reading up on it, shared it with their families, and started with some practices that they wanted to do. So it really, really made it real for me again that each person is on their own journey when it comes to our striving towards high performance and thriving and interacting with our environment that helps or hinder us. What was, however, consistent in all of the sessions was the insight that the people gained in the value of self-care, and how their own well-being and their resilience can and will drive the stringent performance standards that they set for themselves as leaders. That they cannot just focus on the work, but that they need to focus on more than that in order to achieve those goals. Now, the most common themes in the leadership conversations was definitely also echoed in the last group coaching session. I explored there with the team and the leader present, their engagement levels in the program, the obstacles that they experienced to participate, as well as the value that they received. We gathered information via Mentimeter, and we then synthesized all of that feedback with AI to identify the most prevalent themes. So I just want to, sorry. So we had in plus minus 80% attendance to the sessions, which was again great. People did show up. They wanted to have the information. They wanted to participate. But it's almost as if it had to be dedicated. They had to be mandated to do that, and there needed to be space and time created within their work time to do that. There was real impact and there were real obstacles. The people, they actively participated and they told stories, and the report results really came to life through the stories that ranged from, I totally forgot about it, to I started exercising and I lost 4 kilos and, a hand clap from the whole team, to stories like I was diagnosed with cancer. And having just completed the report, I had some assurance that I had high resilience, and strong resilience, and also some practical advice to maintain and help me through those first few months. That was really a very heartfelt moment for someone to say that and to know that that came right at the right time. Now, as I've mentioned before, the intervention was not intended to develop the team as a whole specifically, but this shared experience of having completed the assessment, having done the group coaching sessions, opened up the conversation around these aspects of our lives and work. It gave team members the same language to talk about their resilience and talk about neurobehaviors and habits. And I find often in organizations that those topics are not always welcomed to talk about in the work environment or related even to the work environment. In fact, I did a project once where someone flat out refused to just even talk about sleep patterns and exercise, and she said it does not fit the work environment. It's, however, in the minority, and I think with more and more drive towards mental well-being and wellness, this is becoming more familiar. So in projects, and Colleen, you've asked, where there are a lot of people involved, we tend to bring in that team focus, where the team is equipped with the knowledge, given language to talk about that, but many more coaching sessions or group coaching sessions where they can talk and share about things that they practically do to improve their neurobehaviors and their resilience, and to keep each other accountable, and to build that into the culture of the team and build in internal accountability within those teams. Okay. So what were the common obstacles to participation? I'm going to end off with this. And I guess you would all recognize them. there was a significant obstacle in terms of time constraints and workload and busy schedules. Many people mentioned that they just did not have the time to pack something else into their routines. And they quoted, the never-ending deadlines as a reason for not fully engaging in the program. On top of that, to balance then work and family life, because family life is also part of what we need to juggle, was the second biggest theme that emerged. And that made it very difficult to find time for self-care activities. It really highlighted for me the challenge of integrating well-being into the whole busy lifestyles that people lead, of which work is just one aspect of it. People had personal challenges, like I mentioned. Person had been diagnosed with cancer. Another person told us about having had a heart attack just before the project started. And obviously, this indicates to us that there's different life events that make people participate. It can hinder them, but I found in the past as well that people who've had health scare often are very supportive of this. The person who had the heart attack didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to share about the story. He just said to the group, just do these things. And it was so powerful, and more than a story even. So yeah, other people just straightly said that they lack the prioritization of this. They admitted to not prioritizing using the app. It came last on their list. But this highlighted to us the need to reframe these types of initiatives, not just as self-care, but also as core to work performance, and to bring those two much closer together. And then I'm sure many of you who work inside or with large organizations understand the constraint of competing initiatives. This initiative ran alongside other wellness initiatives, wellness days. The people had coaching sessions, they had wellness sessions that they were involved in, and they had to attend to these as well. Now, we started off in the beginning of the project asking the HR team what would be these other things so that we could integrate it. And specifically with the leadership team, when I became aware that they are also busy with leadership coaching, I encouraged them to take these goals that they are now getting for themselves or making for themselves as part of the Neurozone results, to take that into their leadership journey, and to use that process also to try and achieve the goals that they are setting there for themselves. And we'll look at that in the conclusion. There were many competing initiatives that talked about the same things, but in different ways. And on the one hand, it took the capacity away for people to participate. But I also heard stories where people said, I heard about that in that session, and now I see it here, and now it clicks for me. So comes back to my recommendation in the end. What were the positive changes that we heard about? So many participants reported that they became more aware of their own needs and making a conscious effort to prioritize self-care. And it was touching to see how deeply some people realized that when they were confronted with a resilience score that they did not expect, that they have thought about themselves as these high performers, and they were high performers, are high performers, but their capacity to deal with adversities is under pressure. People testified about learning to put themselves first. They included recognizing the importance of self-care for overall well-being and performance, and also linked it to the realization that if I cannot help others if I don't help myself. So that was really great to hear. There were other reported positive changes as well, such as improved mental well-being, where participants said they discovered and used the techniques to calm their minds, reduce stress, improve their mental health, because the app and the report itself provides very practical tips around things like mindfulness practices, time for reflection. And that had subsequent impacts of enhanced focus and productivity, improved sleep habits, better emotional regulation, and this understanding of mindfulness and a present moment focus that has so many benefits in navigating back to the baseline relaxed physiological state. Now, the factors that really supported the project to achieve these positive impacts, and I've mentioned a few of them already, was the very clear and the substantive business rationale for the initiative that was driven from leadership, the strong leadership support itself that we had, the high participation rates in the personal meetings, but because people retained what they heard in the personal meetings and could share that back also. And then, of course, the active coordination and promotion of the initiatives by the HR team, because they have had that experience and benefited from the process themselves. So what was the key learnings and the outcomes? What is the conclusion? Ultimately, I think the project showed that there is always in large organizations a systemic need, a need for systemic support at that workplace level to make well-being and the initiatives that support it part of the culture. But making it part of the culture if culture is the way we do things, it means that time and resources to prioritize that self-care needs to be supported by the organization so that the uptake of these initiatives can be done better. Now, the personal learnings that I took from this project was, first of all, that the journey to high performance and thriving is a very personal one. And it definitely requires the uptake of individual responsibility. So we saw that the quantitative reassessment rates were not that high, very low, in fact, but the qualitative feedback showed significant positive changes in those who actively participated. So participants who benefit the most seem to have gained the most, and which makes sense. Momentum is key, and momentum is kept through personal contact. People change people, and in each of the projects, keep that in mind, that it's where people connect and talk about these things that that the learning really takes place and the time and capacity is created. Obviously, bring personal and business benefit together so that people don't just see it as the nice thing that a company do to support me in my well-being, but on the other hand, ask me to do more and more work. Build that bridge between how your capacity is improved for this more work that we need to do, because that is the reality of the environment and the challenge that lies before it, the task at hand. And then lastly, I want to encourage each one of you to keep at it. Continuous exposure to the care and the self-care message from the organization. Meet people where they are, and it shifts their behavior. I cannot overemphasize it enough that people are at their own space, but every time, and we know that about the brain, that they hear this information, that it comes to them in a different form maybe, but as the same message, it builds the neuron pathways, and at some point, life circumstances and information comes together and shifts behavior for people. And that's the impact that we want to make. That's my conclusion. So we have 4 minutes left, unfortunately. Any questions that I can respond to? Yes, Colleen.
Marina, how do we get involved if we want to be trained, what the price per assessment is, and or the Neurozone app? Because as we're out in the world, we're going to have to sell this to our clients as well. But how do we get involved? Are you the contact person or is there someone else?
Okay, here comes the slides. More resources.
Sorry, I don't mean to jump ahead.
Thank you so much for opening up the next part of the conversation. It's great. So, first of all, your ordering and administration and support is all done through JVR. There's their number. You can email advisors at JVR Africa for inquiries about how to order and administrate the instrument. And then client services for any technical support issues. Now you will have your first experience of completing the assessment yourself tomorrow or over the weekend. And if you experience any challenges, please reach out to client services at JVR Africa for any technical support. Yes, Karina.
Thank you, Marina. I would like to show my face, but apparently the host doesn't want to see me, so that's fine. I thought I'm the host. Maybe, Marina, just to also mention to everyone that there's a certification training for the Neurozone Personal Assessment, for this assessment that Marina explained or talked about now, and also the one that you will be getting the link to complete yourselves as well. The certification training is not compulsory. You can use the assessment if you want to without being certified in that. The benefit of being certified is obviously you will have more knowledge on how to use it and understand it better. That's the main aim of the certification training. It's not compulsory. And like Marina has also mentioned there, sorry Marina, now I'm stealing your thunder, is of course you get CPD points for that as well, for HPCS ACPD points. And then another benefit is if you do the certification training, you will get a 15% discount on the when you buy credits, when you buy the assessment for your clients, you will qualify for a 15% discount on your account for this specific assessment. Not everything in JVR, but for this specific assessment then. So yeah. But Colleen, anyone else, you are more than welcome to check our website also, or just send us a mail to the email addresses that Marina has just shown.
Yes, so that's the resources that we would like you to make use of most. The training is a 4-hour training. It's really with a theoretical component in the beginning that gives you some theoretical basis from where to engage in the practical, but very informative. Some other resources that you can also use is we decided quite a while ago, in order to also gather more data on resilience, that we will make available a 3-minute self-assessment on the Neurozone website and the app. Now that is assessing only the Neurozone Resilience Index, in other words, the resilience score. It is not assessing the neurobehaviors. So also for every one of you, you can go and download the app now from the Google Play Store or App Store. Please do not complete the 3-minute assessment. Please wait for your special link that will invite you to do the full assessment, because that means that we would have set you up already in the background. However, you can use this free assessment in the app and on the website to maybe start a conversation with a client and talk to them about what resilience is, and start the process there. because that is available for free to you. And then also on the Neurozone website, there is really a lot of research and science papers and white papers around the thinking. If you want to understand the theoretical basis behind everything, there's a science library that gives articles about each of the neurobehaviors and why they are included. And then YouTube is also many of master classes that have been recorded that you can look at to give you more information. So many free resources, but then also the resource of being trained that can help you dive deeper into and see more of the iceberg that we showed you today. That's all from my side, with 2 minutes over the time. And yeah, let's give a few more minutes if there are anyone that has questions right now that they would like to have answered.
Marina, I'm trying to ask to answer the questions. So I've answered some questions. There is I haven't read Dorothia's one, but do you have access to it's quite a lengthy one. Do you have to the Q&A, do you have access to that, or must I read it?
I can see the webinar chat, but I don't.
Not the Q&A.
Yeah, there's the Q&A, Isabel.
If you maybe just go to the sort of second last one, Dorothea.
Okay, so Dorothea, this is not fair, but it would be fascinating for HR to check absenteeism data with the resilience data. Yes, so Dorothea, what I didn't go into and what we do go into the training is that there are also questions in the Neurozone Personal Assessment that assesses absenteeism or turnover intention, absenteeism, job satisfaction, burnout. There are two more that I can't remember now. So where large groups do this, we can do a customized report for them that also links resilience to those organizational outcomes. It is not reported on in the personal report, so people don't see it in their personal report, but because we do gather those data, we can do customized reporting for organizations.
Right, fantastic, Marina. Thank you so much. I can just confirm that I've been neurozoned for a year now, and I'm really actually applying that. And for the most part, if I'm good at it, I've got wonderful results in terms of resilience. Maybe just to also let the colleagues know that you will receive an email then, all of you who attended, receive an email tomorrow from JVR with a link to the assessment that you can do. If you can please complete that before close of business on Monday. And then also we will make sure that there's more information on the reports and cost or training and so as well. But then also I have to apologize. Marina has asked me to share some documents during the training and some links. And for some reason, I couldn't share it with everyone just because of a technical issue that I should have set it up beforehand and not during the webinar. But next time when we do a webinar, Marina, I will know. Apologies for that. We will also make sure that we share those links in the email. So apologies for the quite lengthy email, but there's a big Christmas present as far as the report goes.
So Annie asked, how do you know if we attended, to send the link? There's an attendance register because you registered for the session, and Zoom actually gives the opportunity to check all the attendance. So that's how we will know. And Michael asked if they can get this recording, Karina. Can that be made available?
Yes, Marina. So we will definitely make that available. I'm not sure how at this stage, Michael. It's between us and the marketing department, but it will definitely be available. And I know my colleague Sandra is also on the call. So Sandra, if you can just make a note that when we communicate with marketing that we also share the link to this.
Okay, I see here a question that could we also please get pricing on the Neurozone as well as the app subscription? Let's include that in the email that will be sent to you tomorrow so that everyone has the same information. We're running out of
Absolutely.
time now and we're overstepping on your commitment of time. So, but thank you. Please let the questions come in.
Okay, then everyone, you must have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for attending and watch this space. We plan to do a lot more free webinars and insightful webinars this year as well. Have a good evening.
Take care.
Okay, thank you, Marina.
Thanks, Karina.
Let me just stop the recording.